Hi, I'm Andy Horwitz. I am the director of the Criminal Defense Clinic here at Roger Williams Law School. I've been directing this clinic for getting on close to 30 years now. The point of this video is to give you some information about what the Criminal Defense Clinic is. And I'm very fortunate to have with me three clinic alums who will share with you some of their experiences. But in a nutshell, what the clinic involves is students working under my supervision and under my law license, but licensed by the Supreme Court of Rhode Island to represent individuals. Mostly what we do is misdemeanor criminal defense, where we're operating in the state district court, representing people in a variety of misdemeanor offenses, domestic violence offenses, drunk driving, chemical test refusal, offenses like that. The design of the program is that the student is individually responsible for the representation of the clients. I'm very actively involved as a supervisor, but I'm not actively involved with the client directly. The point is for the student to learn what it feels like to be the individual responsible for the representation of the clients, not only the behind the scenes work in meeting, counseling, interviewing, and that sort of thing, but also the work in court. So that's the program in a nutshell. It's different from an externship in that in an externship program, there's another lawyer who's primarily responsible for the cases. In the clinic, because I'm the attorney of record, I'm allowed to make you, the student, primarily responsible for the case and for the client. So it's a very different kind of learning experience. So with that, I'm going to turn things over by asking some questions to the folks who have agreed to join me to give you a sense from their perspective of what the experience was like. So Brandon, can you briefly introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name's Brandon Potter. I just graduated this past year. I'm currently studying for the bar exam that I'm going to be taking at the end of July. I was in the criminal defense clinic the first semester of my 3L year. And after that experience, I liked it so much that I went and interned at the Rhode Island Public Defender for my last semester.
Great. Can you describe a little bit about what you experienced, what your experience was like as a student, what your average day or week looked like?
My average day would be going to court pretty regularly. I was constantly reviewing discovery material, analyzing the case file, figuring out the best strategy to proceed in a case, uh, meeting clients, figuring out how to advocate for them based on what their goals and needs of whatever particular circumstances they had were. But really feeling like I was actually a lawyer, being the person who was appearing on their behalf and doing all of the work.
And what would you say the primary skills you were able to develop in the program were?
Um, I mean, I learned a lot. I really learned a lot. It was by far the most rewarding experience that I had in law school. But the three things that really come to mind for me were how to truly be a client centered lawyer. I mean, that's a term that I had heard a lot of, but I learned how to not just like really listen deeply to the client, but figure out what the key facts of whatever happened that brought them to the place where they were criminally charged with something and identify what was really important to them and counsel them based on that. I learned a lot about strategy. Again, centering, anchoring to that point of what was important to their particular needs of how to resolve a case and how to ultimately get there or get as close to that position as possible, how to counsel them based on that. And certainly not least, I learned a lot of how to actually be an effective courtroom advocate. I got really comfortable being able to speak in court, learned how to negotiate with prosecutors, and ultimately learned how to prepare for a real trial and how to successfully win that trial.
Thanks so much. Emily, if you could introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Emily Rodriguez Johnson. I graduated from RWU Law in 2024. I am now a staff attorney at the Legal Aid Society in New York. I practice in our Staten Island office. I did the clinic both semesters of my 3L year. I loved it so much the first time I had to come back. And, I will say about the clinic is the work I did while I was there is exactly the same as the work I do every day at a public defender's office. There really is not a whole lot of difference. So it prepared me exceptionally well for that.
Right. Can you describe anything in particular from your experiences that stood out to you that sort of felt like it made a difference in your career and your career path and your future?
Yeah, definitely like Brandon said, just appearing in court, that is such a big hurdle, I think, for new attorneys and getting comfortable in front of judges. So getting to do that, I think definitely put me a step ahead of some of my coworkers who had never appeared in front of a judge before. And then just learning how to talk to clients, how to make them feel comfortable, how to get them to open up to you. Because a lot of times clients, when they come to you, it's not their first time around the criminal justice system. And so there's a lot of mistrust there sometimes. And so the clinic definitely helped me learn how to talk to them, how to get them to trust me, and how to really build that kind of client-lawyer relationship.
Right. Thanks. Jonte, could you introduce yourself?
Yes, so my name is Jonte McKenzie. I graduated from RWU Law in May of 2024, same as Emily, and I served as the Student Bar Association president. I also did the clinic my last semester of 3L year, and it was such a rewarding experience. Um, I'm currently a judicial law clerk for the Rhode Island Superior Court for the civil motion calendar, and I used a lot of what I learned in the clinic through legal research and writing and applied it to my current position as a judicial law clerk.
So, Jonte, I don't think you plan on practicing criminal law, at least not in the short term. How did the work in the criminal defense clinic, do you think, help prepare you for the practice of law in other fields?
So, a lot of what I learned in the criminal defense clinic are transferable skills. So, skills that you would have to use in any field of law, whether that be civil or criminal, such as I stated, legal research and writing, researching the law and applying it to the facts in the case, is what we're going to be doing as lawyers. Also, oral and written communication is very, very important. Client advocacy is very, very important, whether your client is a business, whether your client is a person, and so on. And also negotiation tactics. I think negotiation was one of the things that I didn't know how to do. And I think the clinic really, really helped develop negotiation tactics and skills, and helped us to be overall better client advocates at the end of the day.
Right. Any particular moment or experience that stands out in your memory from your experience in the clinic?
Yes, there was a moment where I actually first had to negotiate with the prosecutor, and I remember the clinic prepared us for this moment. We went over negotiating, we went over tactics, but I remember I'm usually not afraid of public speaking, and I'm usually pretty good at being a people person, but I remember the first moment when I had to negotiate with the prosecutor, I was almost shaking in my boots. And I remember in that moment, I was like thinking, what do I do? How do I do it? But then I kind of took a beat and I made sure just to think about being the best advocate for my client and having their end goals in my mind during the negotiation. And I remember in that moment, again, it was a new experience for me, feeling kind of terrified of that interaction. But afterwards, I felt like I can do anything. That moment truly taught me how to be an advocate, for a client and negotiate effectively.
That's great. Thanks. So, Brandon, any words of advice you would have for a student or any information you want to share for a student who's thinking about applying for the criminal defense clinic?
Well, if they are serious about being a trial lawyer, and I don't mean just necessarily a criminal defense attorney, but if you have the interest of actually being in court and litigating, I cannot imagine that there's any better training opportunity. Um, you get real cases, you get real clients, you have a true responsibility to get up in court and advocate on their behalf. You are held accountable, and by all measures, it was the most meaningful and rewarding experience that I had in law school. So if you are interested in practicing in a courtroom in any fashion, I think it's an amazing opportunity that people should definitely take up on.
Thanks. Emily, same question.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great if you know that you want to go into criminal defense, but I also think it's great if you aren't really sure what you want to do and you just want to try something and kind of get that in-court experience that you haven't had before. And maybe it's something where you come out of it and you're like, well, this is great. Like me, like this cemented that I want to be a public defender. Or, maybe you were unsure and now you're like, okay, like maybe I don't want to do criminal defense, but I want to be in the courtroom. It's really great for whether you're gung-ho criminal defense or whether you're kind of like in between. I really recommended it. It's the best experience I had in law school for sure.
Thanks. Jonte, same question for you.
Yes, echoing what Emily and Brandon said, I think it's a really great experience to get practical experience again, as was aforementioned. We take on real cases, we handle real client, we deal with real clients, and so I think those skills are going to be transferable wherever you end up going, whether that be again civil, whether you do plan on doing criminal work. And I think that when you're thinking about applying to this clinic, it's important to keep in mind the end goal of what your goals are. And so I think it's equally as important to figure out what you want to do and also what you don't want to do. So I think this is a great experience to see if it's something that, hey, do I want to do criminal defense? Do I want to do criminal work? And even if you don't want to do that, these skills are so transferable that they're invaluable to your career as an attorney. So
Well, thanks so much to the three of you. Let me say a couple of parting words. So, we have an application cycle every fall and every spring. In the spring, we take applications for the fall and spring of the following year. So, planning ahead is critically important. We want students to plan ahead. You heard Brandon talk about the fact that he had a semester in a clinic and a semester in an externship. That's the kind of thing we very strongly encourage, but you need to plan in order to do that. So pay attention to the application cycles. I'm very hopeful that you will apply to work with me in the criminal defense clinic, and I look forward to reading your application materials. Thanks.